We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
Welcome to Liberty Nation Radio, heard coast to coast on the Radio American network from our flagship station in the nation's capital, WWRC. I'm your host, Mark Angelides. On today's special Trump prosecution edition, we're going to be talking whether minds are already made up, what the battle of the ballot box will look like, comparing campaign styles and the battleground brawls. We've got quite the show lined up for you. I hope you enjoy. Have the voters already decided which way they were going to jump prior to Trump's recent conviction in a Manhattan court? We're very fortunate to have with us Liberty Nation's senior political analyst and longtime host of this here radio show, Mr. Tim Donner, to give us the skinny on that. Tim, have minds already been made up, or was a difference made when the 34 felony count verdict came down?
Well, I think, Mark, that most of this is already baked in the sense that everybody already knows that Donald Trump is a wheeler dealer. He's a guy who's willing to cut some corners to get the job done. He's a guy who, comes in looking to break the furniture and fix things that nobody else will fix. So it's predictable that he would assemble unwittingly a lengthy list of enemies who are willing to do anything to take him down. I think people realize this. And the polling that we have, which is not really necessarily very relevant yet at this point, but the polling that we do have that occurred just before the verdict was issued showed that 2/3 of people had already made up their minds it wasn't going to change. And then you had almost equal numbers of people who said they would be either less likely or more likely to vote for him. So it looks to me like it's pretty much a wash, if I had to guess. I don't think it's changed the contours of the race, because if this was somebody in his first try for the presidency and he was convicted on 34 felony counts, his career, maybe even his life for a large part, would be over, but not Donald Trump. So I think the evidence would point more towards people having already made up their mind than being shocked suddenly by Donald Trump being convicted of a crime in Manhattan by Democratic prosecutors, a Democratic district attorney, and a Democratic president who sent his operative, Robert De Niro, to intimidate the jury a day before they were contemplating the verdict. So I think people can see pretty clearly what's going on here. And the biggest question, I suppose, is whether the voters share the view of people on the left, which is that Trump, and I call it the hitch factor, that he had it coming to him, that despite the specifics of this case, which may have been flimsy, whatever, that everybody knows he's a bad guy and he's broken the law somehow, some way. So therefore,
he's deserving of
I don't
some
know if
kind
this
of...
case was, I don't know if this case was a good case or not, but he sure had it coming to him. It's about time. That's the response that is the most dangerous for Trump. But you've got to think that most of those people are already voting against Trump to begin with. And not to drown you in numbers, Mark, but there was one other survey done of people who said that they might change their minds based on the verdict. But an overwhelming majority of those people do not support Biden and would not vote for Biden. So I'm not sure even that those I'll change their mind when the verdict comes in really changes things all that much.
Yeah, I think the key term he used there was right at the beginning, where he said it's already been baked in to the recipe, as it were. So everybody knew there's 91 felony charges facing former President Trump. These are just 34. There was bound to be one of them that he would be found guilty on at some point. Now, whether they stand or not through the systems of appeals that are sure to come, that's a slightly different question. But there's a couple of points I wanted to bring up and get your thoughts on here. Now, obviously, Liberty Nation, we had a roving reporter down at the Libertarian Party convention recently, and there Donald Trump made a pitch to the Libertarian Party. Now, they're fairly consistent with around 3% of the vote. In fact, so consistent that he mocked them at their own rally, which was
Yes.
quite an interesting move to do. But
Well, he
uh,
didn't mock them so much as challenge them by
sure,
saying,
let's put it
if you
that
want to just
way.
settle for 3% of the vote forever, then that's your
Mm.
decision. Right.
So the interesting thing that I think comes out of this is what we saw from all the photographs and the footage there, where there are so many people with the Free Ross signs referring to the founder of the Silk Road website, Ross Ulbricht, and Donald Trump promised that he would commute that sentence. Now that's an issue that animates all Libertarian Party voters
Mm-hmm.
because they see it as a judicial overreach of such magnitude. Now, these 34 felony counts for which Donald Trump has been found guilty in Manhattan, will they see that as the same kind of overreach? And have the people involved in prosecuting Donald Trump in Manhattan, have they made Donald Trump a martyr to the libertarians? And whereas he may have got perhaps a third of that 3% beforehand, a third to a half, will he now be likely to get almost all of that because he is, as far as they see it, some kind of martyr to their ideals of government overreach and the prosecution of an individual for essentially what they would not consider crimes.
Well, I think the appearance at the,
Sorry, I'll rephrase that into the simplest possible
yeah,
form. Has he just locked up the libertarian vote?
well, our own Scott Cosenza, who was covering the Libertarian Party convention and saw Mr. Trump's speech and the reaction to it, um, he's certainly going to draw some more votes because that is a central issue. As you said, it's something that they feel nobody else is going to offer to do. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. hasn't offered to do it. Obviously, Biden hasn't offered to do it. The Libertarian Party convention appearance, Mark, I think says the same thing as his appearance in the Bronx, which drew over 20,000, and his appearance in New Jersey, which drew over 100,000, and his appearance at the UFC fight on
Mm.
Sunday night, where he got a uproarious um, reception from the UFC fans. He is willing to go anywhere, anytime, any place, and talk to anybody about anything. And I think that benefits him. He didn't go to the Bronx because he thinks that he can win the Bronx. Didn't go to New Jersey. Maybe he thinks he can win New Jersey. But most of all, he thinks he can force Joe Biden to have to defend New Jersey.
Mm.
And likewise, that's time that Biden should be spending somewhere else, probably in the Midwest, where Biden's likely to pitch his tent for the rest of the campaign because he has to win Pennsylvania and Wisconsin and Michigan, as it now looks, in order to win a second term. So, yes, I think he's going to get libertarian votes. He's already showing that he's going to get a substantial bump in his vote among Black men. And I think the fact of his conviction could actually help his vote among Black men because he's been incarcerated. And of course, he's potentially going to be incarcerated or facing potential incarceration, however you want to put it. And that creates some sort of a bond between Black men and Trump, victims
There
of the
was,
system.
Tim, just to jump in on that, there was a hand-wringing excuse for an article on the nation's capital's favorite paper about how saying that this helps Donald Trump with Black voters is in itself, the point was that in itself, saying that it'll help him, that's racist to point out. And I thought that was quite funny, just how
That's
desperate.
the best they can come
They
up
are.
with.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you take the numbers seriously, the polling numbers among various demographic groups, if you look at the average of them, it could set Biden up to lose a landslide. Because if he's losing 25-30% of the black vote and only splitting or slightly losing the Hispanic vote, he's finished. Full stop.
We'll continue talking about those numbers and those margins after this short break. Don't go anywhere. We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.